Hey, what's up and good Friday afternoon, everybody. It's your buddy Choppadong, Senior Editor of Content here at DFSArmy.com, and I'm coming at you with Week 4 Box Checkers Part 2. Today, we're going to go ahead and cram it all in. We're going to do wide receivers, running backs, and quarterbacks, wrap it all up, put a nice little bow on it, talk a little bit about where we should be greedy, where we should be fearful if we see any of those spots, maybe include a little bit of tournament narrative for MME type stuff, lower exposure. I've already got a couple of key spots in mind, but most importantly, we're going to narrow down your player pool and we're going to get you pointed in the right direction. As I always say, this is not 100% foolproof. There are no black and white rules. There is no rigid system that is one size fits all. This is just the way that I start my research and I start to look at a slate. In no way is it everything that I'm looking at, whereas if there's somebody that's not on this list, he's not in my lineups, that's bullshit. Sometimes these guys do pop in there. If I saw a road tight end, for example, and was in a great position, I'd put him in there if he ended up being somebody I had the most confidence in, or somebody that had both a decent floor and a matchup to test his ceiling, and he fits salary-wise. That would be the type of guy I'd take a shot on. I make a few lineups every single week. I don't just make one cash lineup most of the time. I'm getting away. Early in the year I did because the plays were so simple and so obvious that I just didn't need to make a couple of lineups. I'm starting to get to the point in the season where I'm seeing enough players in different spots that I want pieces of, and it's hard to put 5 running backs in the same lineup. Most sites just don't let you do that. So I'm going to mix and match that player pool of, say, 5 guys among around 3, maybe 4 lineups. And I'm not going to run them all in cash. I start running them in more or less 100-man leagues. One of the things that I like to do, I will run some cash games, some head-to-heads and stuff like that. If I see the need, I will run triple ups, double ups, quintuple, all that stuff if I see the need. Those are generally the weeks where I don't feel that I'm making a lineup that has a lot of upside to it. And I will stay kind of a little flatter in my ROI in those weeks. But when I see chances to make some upside, like somebody's in a smash spot that I see that nobody's talking about, and I really want to take advantage of that guy, then I'm going to start leaning more towards bigger leagues, triple ups, quintuple ups, 100-mans, things like that, because those are the things that I want to win. Those are the things that pay and that have the upside, and I'm going to stack a little bit. If I find myself using a lot of QB wide receiver stacks or running back defense, type stacks, things like that, then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to sling them back because I realize that is getting me into more of a boom or bust style. And I'm not going to play very well with the high bust style in a 50-50, so I'm going to lean more towards something that's going to pay me if it goes boom. And that is all experience, and that's all stuff that I talk about with my room and people that talk to me inside DFSArmy.com. If you want the type of feel or when should I kind of change my idea, again, you can't be rigid in your game plan. You have to be flexible. You have to be open-minded. You have to feel sort of the way your lineup is being built or your general ideas for the slate in a given week, and then say, this is probably where these lineups are going. I'm going to build the best lineups I possibly can. And then I'm going to look at those lineups and see how much risk are those lineups taking on. I'm still going to like those lineups, but how much risk are these lineups taking on? And then I'm going to allocate my contests accordingly. It's sort of like I'm not going to choose the contests first. I'm going to choose the lineup first and then plug it in where it's most likely to do the best. A little bit different way of building, a little bit different way of doing things, but it's how I do things. And if you're kind of like that, you like to kind of fly by the seat of your pants, play some GPPs one week, play some cash another week, and then kind of ebb and flow in between the styles, then maybe I'm the kind of coach you're looking for. So DFSArmy.com, coupon code CHOP, C-H-O-P, 20% off, it triggers, and you can jump in here and you can start talking with me, and we can start learning together and start playing together and start getting better together. If you noticed last week, we had $1 million winner out on the landscape, and that came from our coaching notes, which I definitely look at. That came from our domination station optimizer. I definitely look at that. But most importantly, it came from the community and a bunch of talking and strategizing in group format where people were constantly bouncing ideas off of each other's heads, and that's what settles in on those picks oftentimes. Why try and go it alone? Why not knock 20% off and get in here and open up the actual VIP portion of it and get to talking to people, because that's where you're going to find the best success, in my opinion. That said, let's go ahead and let's dive in. Actually, I will show you really quick. I want to point out the lineup. I didn't point this out very well earlier in the week, but Daniel Jones, Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, that's 3 from one game, right? And then Mike Evans ran it back. 3 New York, 1 Tampa Bay. Hit on all of his picks. Bang. His foundation or his core of his lineup went off. 3x1 stack is an Onslaught stack. If you haven't seen that, you need to go to DFSArmy.com. You need to look up under the NFL tab and see CG's Onslaught Stacks article. It's free, and it's showing you how much leverage these Onslaught stacks have. When you game stack, when you run it back with another, what you're basically saying is the only way Daniel Jones, Sterling Shepard, and Evan Ingram are going to have a good day is if somebody on the other team is keeping up with them. You can run 4x2, you can run 3x2, 2x2, 3x1, 2x1, whatever. But those types of game stacks where you take some other piece from the opponent and hope for a shootout is an Onslaught stack, and those give you the most leverage on the field. Period. End of story. Everybody else these days runs, quarterback, wide receiver, because I hear everybody talk about that, and then they stop. And they wonder why they don't have the upside to win. See, you can get into a really, really chalky game, like Kansas City and Detroit this week, and you can stack it 3x2. Everybody else is going to have Mahomes and Kelsey, or Mahomes and Watkins, or whatever, Stafford and Galladay, and then run it back with, Mecole Hardman or something. I mean, everybody's going to have little combinations of that. But where people start getting fearful is where you need to start getting greedy. And what I mean by that is they get afraid to take too many pieces out. Well, I read that you can't take more than 3 guys out of a game. Bullshit. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it, because that is baloney. Why can't you? If that game goes 43-38, you're going to want as many damn pieces of it as you can get. You're going to want the quarterback and a couple of receivers and a couple of receivers from the other team and maybe a running back or whatever, because that's what's going to accumulate all the points, because all those points from the entire slate are crammed into that one game, and the people with the most pieces of that one game are the ones that win. Does it happen every week? No. But when it does happen and you're the one that's in that game, you have leverage. See, you got greedy where everybody else got fearful. People got fearful to take too much of that game because they've read that you can't take too much of that game. And so you said greedy and said, YOLO, bam, I'm going to take it all. So you can fade that game, of course, and say, I hope it duds out, or you can go completely overboard in the other direction and take it all. And that's what we're talking about with these Onslaught stacks. So practice that, incorporate that a little bit into your building style. And is it going to go off less often? Yes. Are you going to lose more often? Yes. But when it hits, you are going to get deeper into the money. You're going to get closer. If not, you're going to win that tournament. You're going to realize tremendous amounts of leverage over everybody else, every other mamsy-pamsy player in the world that stopped from going overboard, and you had the cojones to go overboard. You are going to realize leverage like you've never seen before. And that's how you win GPPs in today's 2019 environment. That said, let's go find some. I'm going to go into the research station. I've already got the wide receivers called up. And I'm going to look into a couple of things. Notice I've got the 8 o'clock games turned off. And I'm going to look at a couple of things. I'm going to look for targets. I don't care necessarily about implied team totals, home team, road team, all that jazz. I'm looking for targets. So you can see I've got the little filter on here. If I check my filter, it was greater than 6 targets. Okay? So I'm looking for greater than 6 targets. Why? Because I really want 7 or 8, but I want to leave a little bit of wiggle room on the bottom end of that so that I can kind of cruise through that list. I come over here and I want players that are getting red zone work specifically inside the 10, not even inside the 20. There's a lot of empty targets in there. I want the ones that are right on the goal line. I want somebody they trust to get into the end zone and get open and throw the route to that scores the touchdown. So that's who I'm looking for. If I'm looking for greater than 6 targets, and at least right now, 3 weeks into the season, at least one inside the 10 target, who am I going to lose? Well, I'm going to lose Josh Gordon. I'm going to lose Christian Kirk, believe it or not. Oh, it's DJ Moore and Josh Gordon. I'm going to lose John Brown. That's kind of a surprise. I'm going to lose all of these schlubs. McLaurin, that's not, no way. I was going to say that was baloney because I've seen him catch inside the 10 in the game. So Marvin Jones, DK Metcalf of all people, you'd think he'd be in there. Jarvis Landry, not in there yet. Well, he's been targeted 3 times. He doesn't have any catches inside the 10. So you could still use him. He's going to catch eventually. Cole Beasley, of all people. You'd think he'd be squirting in there a little bit. Damian Amendola, the little slot guys. Mohamed Sanu. You'd think those guys would be targeted inside the 10. Haven't been yet. So I'm not probably going to include those guys on my list. So let's go ahead and knock some of those dudes off of there. Inside the 10 targets, let's go greater. Greater than 0.5, because I want to include those that at least got one target. Whack. Down we go. Now we've got a really, really short list. Sammy, I also, honestly, this doesn't include the Julio Joneses and whatnot. The studs are there. I'm going under 7,000 on Fanduel because I'm just wanting to focus a little bit on value, because typically when we pay up for running backs, we need value at wide receiver. We need value at tight end. We need value at defense. Those types of volatile positions. And you don't pay up for volatility. That doesn't make a lot of sense. You might in some tournaments, don't get me wrong, but generally speaking, you don't. Sammy Watkins, Kenny Golladay, great spots, obviously. Julian, these are guys, again, that are getting more than 6 targets a game. They're getting targeted inside the 10-yard line, and they're under $7,000. Kenny Golladay, Julian Edelman, Lockett, Shepard, Fitzgerald, Marquise Brown. Look at some of these names. These are, you already know these names, but this is proof that they're panning out. Now, we'll scroll over here a little bit, and we will pay a little bit of attention to the team total, because I've mentioned with wide receivers that I want those that are under 18 points, so call it 18.5. The reason why is because I want garbage time points. So that's going to be Miami and Jacksonville this week, Dede and Preston Williams. Consider. I'm not saying they're smash locks. I'm saying consider. If you're down in that price range looking for a wide receiver, consider these guys. Don't just dismiss them because, well, they're not supposed to score any points. Nah, under 18 tells you garbage time. So let's shift this, and now let's go greater than 27. So 26.7. And the only one we have is Sammy Watkins. Can that be true? Let's go ahead and let's clear that filter off of there and see if everything is under 27. Under. Okay, Tyler Lockett, Sterling Shepard, Marquise Brown. These guys are really, really close, but you've got a couple that are on the low side, and you've got one that's on the high side, Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins getting 6 targets, targeted inside the 10. He's implied to score over 27 points, and he's under $7,000. There you go. Very, very good spot to run Sammy Watkins. Probably cash. Now, the guy has not been getting results, but that's because wide receiver is fluky. The activity is there. The opportunity is there. The chances are there. And we saw what he did in week 1. But wide receiver is a volatile position. That's why we typically don't pay up for it. So wide receiver-wise, there's your short list. And your super, super short list, Preston, Dede, if you need them, and then Sammy. Sammy would be one of the top guys I would go to this week. I'd try and run it back with Golladay, too. That's just me. Let's go into the running backs, and let's talk a little bit about those. Again, you can see that I have the 8 o'clock games turned off. Now we're going to go back with running backs to home teams favored, implied to score a lot of points. They're a less volatile position. We want the game script in their favor. We want a big lead. We want running the ball late, but we also want guys that are incorporated in the passing game. So we want a couple of targets. First thing that I'm going to do, scroll over here. I didn't take any kind of price point off of this, but the first thing that I want to do is take these guys over here, and I want to look at those home teams that are favored and implied to score points. You can see I have no underdogs in here. I've got everything over 24 points listed, right? So scroll back over here, and I see the guys that are getting the workload. Ezekiel Elliott, shocker. Why is that an 8.20? Well, all right, we got to take that one off of there. Got to take that 8.15 off of there. I guess that we didn't do that earlier. There are no 425 guys that fit this bill right now. Austin Eckler, Chris Carson, Todd Gurley, Marlon Mack, Wayne Gallman, shocker, right? Devontae Freeman, Mark Ingram, Rex Burkhead, if he plays, Justin Jackson. This is last week. You're going to get to use him before Melvin Gordon comes back. LaShawn McCoy, Duke Johnson, Damian Wade. Look at these guys. These guys are in the scenario where they're home favored, implied to score a lot of points. Now we need to start checking for traffic. So we're going to come over here to the statistics, and we're going to see who's getting the touches. All the touches. More than, call it about 14.5, 15, something like that. We want guys that are getting the work. There they are, Chris Carson, Todd Gurley, Marlon Mack. I want to drop that down a little bit and include a few more guys. I might go to about 12.5. Let's see if the list grows some. Picks up Gurley, Mack, Ingram. Out of these guys, these are your high traffic guys that are in the home favored spots. So I scroll over here to the red zone. Let's see who's getting used inside the red zone. Got some attempts in there. Look at Mark Ingram with 11 red zone carries, 10 and 9 inside the 10, 5 inside the 5. Leads this list of players. That's pretty crazy stuff. File that away in the old memory banks. And last week shouldn't have surprised you. A couple of red zone receptions out of a couple of these other guys. If you want to look at who's getting the receiving work, you can come all the way over here to rushing attempts per game, receiving attempts per game, receiving TDs, whatever, targets per game. There they are, targets per game. 6 here for Eckler, 4 for Carson. 4 for Carson. Yes, Chris Carson's still in play. If you've got the cojones to go back to the well after all of the fumble talk, the game script fits him again. He's at home. He's favored. He's implied to score a ton of points. Everybody's going to be on Lockett and Wilson. But Chris Carson is cash viable. He's getting 15 rushing attempts per game. He's getting work inside the red zone, inside the 5-yard line, inside the 10-yard line, and he's getting 4 targets per game to make him a little bit game script independent. That's big. You need to be paying, yes, he's got some fumbles, but you need to be paying attention to the actual numbers. The fumbles should go away. If not, he's going to lose his damn job, right? The fumbles should go away. So you're looking at this list here in general. Marlon Mack's in a great spot. Mark Ingram's in a pretty good spot again. But Marlon Mack, Chris Carson on the road down in Arizona, it looks like. Austin Eckler on the road in Miami. I don't know that I would worry too much about him. I guess being I preach home, road, whatever, but there's just not a big list to go with here. I don't trust Todd Gurley for anything. Right now, Eckler, Carson, Mack, Ingram, if those are your 4 guys in your list, I'm good with that. I'm more than good with that. If I come back and take the touches off, I mean, why would I take the touches off? I don't want no volume. Who am I picking up? Wayne Gallman, maybe. Devonta Freeman, Ingram, Burkhead, Jack. I mean, do I trust any of these guys more than these guys? Maybe a James White. Let's look at James White a little bit closer. Because he's missed a game. But James White is only getting, 3.5, 4 rushing attempts per game. He's getting 6 targets per game. Right? So I scroll over here a little bit more to the red zone stuff. James White has not been used inside the red zone for rushing yet. That's all Sony Michel territory, but he gets passing work inside it. If you remember me talking 2 for 2 inside the 5 or inside the 10. If you heard me talk earlier this year about trap percentage, the CBS Sportsline article, it makes a lot of sense. You don't want a guy who's being empty activity inside the 20s. You want a guy who's down inside the 20 or down inside the 10 when the stuff matters. That's why Will Dissly is a good tight end this week. He doesn't get used a lot between the 20s, but he sure does get used when they get close to the end zone. James White's in the same situation. He doesn't rush the ball a lot, but he gets all of the third down work, and they dump off to him a lot. And they're not afraid to use him inside the red zone to dump off to. And this week, if we don't have a Julian Edelman and we don't have a legitimate tight end, who else are they going to use on the 2-yard line? Josh Gordon? Hey, go long, dude. Run up to the third deck and we'll throw it up there to you. That doesn't count in football. You need a little flat router. And that's James White. I mean, I would go so far as to predict a James White touchdown this week against Buffalo. I think people think I was crazy for saying that, but I'm telling you, he gets used in that area, and there isn't a lot of competition for that kind of work. If the New England Patriots find themselves down there inside the 10-yard line, James White has a very good chance of scoring a touchdown because he gets used down there. All right, let's round off with the quarterbacks. I know we haven't talked a lot of GPP type of stuff yet, but we might hear, nope, we're going to have to include some of the underdog quarterbacks to pick up where I would want to go. And this is where I'm going to look for shootout type stuff. I'm going to want the lower owned side of the shootout. If the game's going to shoot out, then I might want that lower, not for garbage time. Garbage time doesn't help quarterbacks as much as it helps wide receivers. But I want to take a look at the other side of the shootout. So instead of Patrick Mahomes, why not Matt Stafford? I mean, if the game's going to go 30-something to 30-something, Matt Stafford isn't running the ball. He's not grinding the clock down, right? He's chucking it deep. He's got to keep up. He's got to catch up. So this is a great spot for Stafford. He burned us in the situation already once this year. Will he burn us again? I don't know. He's at home this year. I heard a stat on the radio the other day, driving down the road, that out of his 14, this might have come from Daily Fantasy Edge podcast. So shout out to those guys. But out of his 14 career high, best performing career games, 11 of them were at home, and 11 of them came in games implied or with game totals over 50. What's this week? Well, he's at home. Check. He's implied to score over the game is implied at about 50 points, 54, I think. So check. And if 11 out of 14, 3/4 of the time or better, that's when Matt Stafford's had his best games? Huh. Let's see. If I take those 2 brain cells left in my brain, knock them together a little bit, they're going to spit out some Matt Stafford, right? Patrick Mahomes is obvious. Lamar Jackson, obvious. Here's the thing. Here's your GPP thing with Lamar Jackson. His ownership right now is projected really, really low. Okay? Because everybody's in love with Stafford and Mahomes and Danny Dimes and even some Jared Goff and whatever else out there around the industry. So everybody's forgetting about Lamar Jackson. Well, he's priced up there really, really high. And I would just rather play Pat. Yeah, okay. You go ahead and leave all that ownership alone on Lamar Jackson, please. Lamar Jackson to Hollywood Brown is a thing. Hollywood Brown gets targeted deep. A lot of air yards on that kid. And Lamar Jackson can run. Lamar Jackson has a good game, and you saw it in week 1. He's a slate breaker. He has a floor like a Patrick Mahomes. He has a ceiling like a Patrick Mahomes. He's $1,000 cheaper, and he's in a forgotten game right now. Everybody's going to be, oh, this is Baker Mayfield's week. Lamar's at home, dudes. And you're going to get him at low ownership. Low for such a household name. So in your GPPs, when you're setting up exposures in optimizers, preferably DFSArmy.com's optimizer, but why on earth wouldn't you say double the field? If he's projected at 8%, take 15% Lamar Jackson. It's the same thing we did with Julio Jones last week and Mike Evans. If everyone's running to Godwin, I run to Evans. If everyone's running to DeAndre Hopkins or Juju Schuster or whatever, I'm going to Julio Jones. Why? Because Julio Jones can break a slate. And if you're going to get him to me at 4th, 5th, 6th highest ownership or way worse, I'll take those chances on him breaking the slate in just about any matchup. So Lamar Jackson is a slate breaker that you're going to get a discounted ownership. And that's a big deal. That is when you go overboard. And that doesn't mean that the crowd is getting fearful. They're not afraid to play. They just got a little case of Alzheimer's when it comes to Lamar Jackson this week. And so you're going to want to jump on that. Take advantage. Exploit the forgetfulness of the public. Let them run off to Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has, 28 or 32 points this week. Great. Good on him. Lamar Jackson goes for 35. I got more points per dollar because I got him at a cheaper price. That's the way I look at it. Doesn't have to work all the time. It's only got to work a little bit of the time. And when it does, I gain leverage on the field. It's like I said with game stacks. Go overboard. When you see a weakness, when you see market weakness, exploit it. Go overboard. Deshaun Watson, same difference. Russell Wilson's going to be chalk this week. It's fine for your cash games. Fine for your small leagues. If I was playing a 35-person tournament for $25, $50, then I'd probably play some Russell Wilson because I just don't need to take a chance to beat 35 people. But if I'm trying to play against 100,000, 200,000 people, there ain't going to be much Russell Wilson in my lineups. If there is, it's going to be double the field. If he's going to be in there at 20% or 15%, I'm taking 30% Russell Wilson. Because if he has a great game, I'm going to try and outpace you with all the other iterations of my lineups. So I can play the chalk 2 ways. I can fade it, and I can eat the hell out of it. And I like to do a combination of both. Because whatever it is, I'm not going to be in line with the field. I'm either going to be way under it or way over it. And that's where I'm going to gain my leverage. Jared Goff, good spot. Phillip Rivers, sneaky spot. Oh, they're going to run the ball and grind the clock. With who? You think they're really going to hand the ball to Justin Jackson 20 times and grind the clock out? They're still going to be using Eckler. And if Phillip Rivers jumps out to a 3-score lead, do you think they ran all 3 of those touchdowns? I mean, they might got a pick six in there, but do you think they ran all 3 touchdowns in? No. Phillip Rivers probably threw a couple. And he's throwing to Eckler, and he's throwing to Keenan Allen. If Mike Williams is dinged up, he's throwing to just those 2 dudes. And Miami ain't got nobody that can stop him, even if they game plan for it. Phillip Rivers, sneaky tournament play, especially with a pivot off of Wilson. You get all the same other dudes in your lineup, and you get, instead of Wilson, you get Rivers. And Rivers may have the ceiling this week. Goff, same type of situation. Matt Ryan, same type of situation. Jacoby Brissett doesn't have maybe the upside to go off at 35 points, but at 7,300, it's even cheaper on DraftKings, I hope. Where's his DraftKings side? 5,400. 5,400 versus 7,000? This is where I'd be playing some Jacoby Brissett in cash games. Everyone's going to be on Danny Dimes, and Brady's going to be forgotten about too. Now, granted, Buffalo's got a good defense, but you don't think Belichick can dice them up? That's a tournament play. You might get yourself 3 touchdowns out of Tom Brady. Throwing 2 of them to James White, 1 of them to Josh Gordon, and next thing you know, Sony Michel's left out in the cold. Could happen. But if we really wanted to flip to the other side, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the favorites off of my Vegas odds, and then we'll wrap it with this. Let's erase that spread. Let's even erase the team total here, so that we can bring some of those underdogs back and some of those lower totals back. Because I want you to look at one thing. And this is what I'm not excited to play this because I think it's going to work. I'm excited to play it because I think it's got massive leverage. Right there, Case Keenum. 7,200, same price point as these other guys. People would rather play Baker Mayfield. They'd rather play Danny Dimes. They'd rather play, Josh Allen. They'd rather play Kyler Murray, Jameis Winston, even Matt Ryan's not that much more expensive. Rivers, all these guys, right? They'd rather play a lot of these guys. Or spend down a little bit and go grab Minshew, because everybody's in love with that guy right now. I'm telling you right now, Case Keenum's in a weird spot. New York cannot cover anybody. I'm hoping that I see this right when I look at points allowed to the quarterback and I see Case Keenum sitting in here. 311 passing yards allowed per game by the New York Giants. 7 touchdowns. Looks like leader on the slate outside of Matt Ryan, whoever he's facing defensively. Looking down here, where's the fantasy points? Oh, shit, I'm looking at their own stats. That's terrible. Looking down, Keenum, New York Giants, 29th in the league against the pass, 27 points per to the quarterback. Excuse me. Woo! Thank you, buddy. Sorry about that. You got my kid home from school too. But my point is, at the bottom of the league, Russell Wilson's facing a worse defense. Phillip Rivers is facing have these names that we've mentioned yet? I mean, forgive me. Case Keenum is going to be the forgotten man. And if you put something up anywhere remotely close to week 1, then you've got yourself a heck of a value. You got yourself 7,200 on Fanduel, not as big a value there, but at 4,900 on DraftKings, hello, you got yourself a huge value. These are the types of scenarios that you should be thinking about when you're entering large field tournaments. Is Case Keenum going to win the slate? Probably not. But if he surprises everybody like he did in week 1, you've got him at darn near half price. How much more can you spend on receivers? You could run something incredibly unique. You could run Case Keenum with McLaurin, turn around and run it back with Shepard or Ingram or Gallman and say New York's going to blow him out. Keenum's going to be playing catch-up. He's going to be using McLaurin. Giants can't cover anybody. There's your 3 guys, a 2x1 little game stack, little mini onslaught, and then turn around with all that darn money you just saved, and let's go buy Christian McCaffrey, and let's go buy Julio Jones, and let's go buy DeAndre Hopkins. Let's pay all the way up for Chargers defense. Let's throw some Austin Eckler in there. Keenan Allen, whatever. This is how you pile in multiple studs. If the studs have a good game and your value game stack shoots out and goes off, this is how you position yourself to win a tournament. You didn't use anybody that's weird. You didn't you used, say, Eckler, high ownership probably, McCaffrey, high ownership probably, Keenan Allen, high ownership probably. You probably get a lower ownership on Nuke or on Julio Jones, but they're studs. Am I wrong? And instead of taking Danny Dimes, you took Case Keenum. And that's how you flip that shootout on its head. Now, again, the likelihood of this happening is pretty low. But if that's the side of the game that pans out stronger and the rest of your high-priced picks do hit like they should because they're studs, whammo, you got yourself a small battle for the top prize. You've leapfrogged everybody in those big giant GPPs. In the top, say, 400,000 person tournament, you probably got yourself into the top 50,000 just on that alone. And instead of fighting it out with the chalk and 150,000 people for first place, you're only fighting it out with, say, 50,000. Yes, it's still hard to beat 50,000 people, but you've got yourself a third of the competition that you would have had if you'd have played the chalk. That's how you generate the leverage. If this type of stuff means something to you, you need to consider getting the coaching inside DFSArmy.com. Hopefully this short list stuff kind of shows you where we're going, what plays make sense, throw a little bit of twist in there for getting greedy and fearful, as well as a little bit of GPP, small exposure type stuff that could happen. And hopefully it makes you a stronger DFS player. And we can help you do that inside DFSArmy.com. Use the coupon code CHOP, C-H-O-P. Trigger that 20% off discount. Get in here. Start learning for the weekend. We triggered $1 million winner last week. We win every sport all over the leaderboards. You see the little Army hats. It's got to be frustrating you by now, so why not join us? We'd love to help you too. There's no bad blood about what happened a month ago. Get in here. If you're one of us, we'll help you just the same. Take care, guys. Follow the link in the description or in the comment section down there. Like and subscribe the video, ring the notification bell, and I will talk to you later.